Hi, this is David Bailey from David Bailey Shooting Supplies. Right now we're going to have a look at the Guba Ribas 2015 One for All holster. This is the universal holster which will fit any pistol that you throw at it. There's 6 steps to make this holster fit your pistol, and what I suggest you do is you use this video as a supplementary to the supplied manual, not a replacement of the manual. So read the manual, have a look at the video, and then work your way through it step by step, which is exactly what we're going to do. First of all, we're going to use 2 of the 3 supplied Allen keys to take this holster apart. So we're going to split the holster apart straight away, and the way we do that is that we're going to take these 2 screws out. We'll leave this one in place. If you take that one out, this whole front plate will come off, and you'll expose the locking mechanism. There's a little spring and a ball bearing which falls out, which is a rather painful to find if you leave it on the floor, or if it falls on the floor. Okay, first of all we're going to take these 2 screws out, as we said. I'm just going to loosen them off and we'll move them right out. Then we're going to use this Allen key to turn the screw which is embedded in the holster anti-clockwise, and then it's going to jack these 2 parts apart. So I'll just put it on its side for you and you can see it coming apart. So as I say, we're just doing this anti-clockwise. Okay, and she comes apart. Now, as you can see that this screw fell out, I suggest right away that you put this screw back in. And the reason for that is if you push these 2 halves together, you'll find it's one hell of a job to get them apart without this jacking screw. So let's just put that straight in straight away. There we go. The manual refers to these parts as part A and part B, so that's what we're going to be using, the same terms, so you don't get confused as we go through this. So step 1, take the holster apart. Okay, step 2, this is adjusting the position of the passive lock or L lock or part A. So as we said, part A, part B. I'll just move part B out of the way. Let's look at part A. So what I'm going to do is, the way that this holster holds your gun in place is the front of your trigger guard will fall across these two screws here, these 2 nylon headed blocks, and the curvature sits through here. So you'll see in a second how that works. And all I'm doing is adjusting the position of these 2 screws, this distance here, and the distance basically from the end of the holster where it's going to touch the frame to the front of the trigger guard here, so this block. So those 3 dimensions, 1, 2, and the distance backwards and forwards is the way I'm going to do it. Now I'm going to fit it to this pistol. Obviously when handling firearms, the usual, make sure they're unloaded and they're in a safe condition. I'm actually using a chamber flag we actually stock these. Really good idea. Just stick it in there, you know it's safe, you know it's not loaded. So all I'm going to do is going to position this block, part A. You can see the trigger guard running down this plate here, and it needs to drop into that slot. Obviously it's not quite there yet. One thing you do need to do is make sure this block is up. So if you lock the block up, or lock the holster, you'll see this block rise, and that's how it captures the trigger guard. So it's not, I mean, you can fit it in, but again, as you can see, this is riding up. This is at an angle and it's riding up. I need for it to just touch the grip there and for it to slot in. So I need to adjust it. The way I do it is that I use a screw, which is this one here, which when I screw in and out is going to move this whole block up and down. So I don't know if you can see that there, that's moving away. So I actually want it to come closer to the top. So anti-clockwise moves the block up, clockwise moves the block down. And if we do it this way, I think I still need a little bit more. Probably a little bit too far, so I'll move it back again. That's pretty good actually. It's sitting in there quite nicely. Okay. Part 2 now complete. Step 3 is to adjust the front part of the trigger. So again, we know that it's fitting in there nicely. So what we're going to adjust, and it's sort of a bit of a cheat, but because I've already done it on this one, is we're going to adjust these two blocks. Now normally they're screwed right in against this backing plate, and you just unscrew them depending on where your trigger, front of the trigger guard is. So you can see here I've pretty much adjusted this one against and that one against the front of that plate. So all you do is just screw in, screw out, depending on how you need to do it. If your bottom and front of your trigger guard's got a little bit of a kick in there, then obviously this would be screwed in a bit further. So, and they're easy to adjust. You just take the smallest Allen key in the middle, adjust them in, adjust them out. Now make sure it's a snug fit, but obviously not too tight. So as you can see, that's nice and nicely conforms to the profile of the front trigger guard. There you go. Step 3. Step 4 is to adjust the width of the lock. So here we're talking about the distance that this plate here fits on top of the trigger guard. So as you can see in here, it's been adjusted so this plate sits on top of the trigger guard here. Normally, again, when you first get them, this will be closed up, there will be no gap here, and you'll be able to move this backwards and forwards, up and down, because it's not correctly adjusted. So what we've done is unscrewed a couple of screws here, and then again there's a jacking screw that we turn anti-clockwise, moves these two apart and pushes down on the bottom of the trigger guard here. And as you can see, there's no room to wiggle up and down, it's in there nice and solid. So moving all the screws out the way, and they go. The way we get to those screws, those 3 screws, just put your thumb on there, just bring her up, and you can see here. Just my advice is just to loosen these off a couple of turns, and then move the centre one in anti-clockwise until it goes tight, which is basically you've taken up the slack that these 2 screws have given you. Try your gum, have a look at it. No. Again, loosen the 2 screws off, jack it out, just keep going until you got the right dimensions, and you can see this one is the right one, it fits nicely, there's no movement up and down. Step 5 is to actually adjust the active lock, so side B. So what we're actually going to do here now is we're going to replicate the dimensions of this on this block here. So the 2 dimensions that we're going to sort out, obviously it hasn't got the screws for the front of the trigger guard, but what it has got is the gap and the distance from here to here to here to here. So visually, as the instructions say, you can actually look at it and go, you can see this one is down, needs to come up a bit, this block needs to come up a bit to match that. Now you can either do it visually, and that's good enough. You can use a steel rule and just measure it. Or you can use digital micrometer. So if we measure the block here, we're looking at 7.12, and let's see, this is miles out, 10.68. Again, to adjust this block we need to move the screw in and out here. So again, it's the same with part A. If we move it anti-clockwise, it's going to move it up. Clockwise, it's going to move it down. So we need to move it up because we need to narrow that gap. So let me just check this one out. 7.02, 7.67. Oops. Now, doesn't really have to be this accurate, but okay. The other dimension that we want to replicate is this dimension here. Now it's not so much the thickness or the gap here between those 2 blocks, it's between the end plates here. If we put a digital mic over here, for this one we're looking at 15.21. And that's 97, 96, 97. So again, 1.13. Oops. Oh, really, that's pretty good, but I'll open up just a touch just to show you how to do this side. The way that you do this, instead of pulling the block up, you push it down to expose the 2 screws. So again, my advice to you would be just to open these up. Probably no more than a turn. And set your Allen key in the middle one. And just check it out. There you go. Again, it doesn't really have to be that accurate. Obviously, closer is better. Just tighten those 2 screws back up again. So, if we have visually compared the 2 blocks, you can see this inner block is now level with each other, and the gap between the 2 plates here again is level with each other. So you go. Okay, we're going to come to the last step, which is reassemble and adjust the width of the frame. So basically what we've done so far is we've adjusted to the length of the trigger guard, we've adjusted to the thickness of the trigger guard at the bottom, and now we're going to adjust to the width of the trigger guard. The way we do that is to put the 2 halves back together. We've made sure that our jacking screw is screwed in. As we said, we might have a few problems if we don't. Just line up the pieces. There's no need to force, so just take your time. You'll probably find I've pushed that pretty much together. So for this particular pistol and frame width, that's actually not too bad at all. What I'm going to do, however, is put the 2 screws back in, and we're just going to adjust it to get the fine tuning. What we ideally would like to see is see the frame not move at all from side to side whilst it's in the holster. So I'm just going to screw these down so they just touch the holster face. There you go. There we go. So you can see there's just a little tiny bit of movement there. I'm just going to adjust these little bit by little bit. We want it tight-ish, we don't want it so that you cannot get the gun in and out. A little bit more. Now that is good. Very little movement in there, if any. I'll just do it a little bit more. That's pretty solid. Okay, once we've got the holster width right, we then use this jacking screw to come out until we hit the resistance, and then just tighten these up. So that's it, it's the width done. Okay, now that we've finished the 6 steps, there's just one last thing we need to do, which is a bit of fine adjustment. When you get your holster, you'll notice that it will be pre-installed with a small block here at the bottom. I've actually put the larger block in because that's what I need to suit my pistol, and the idea of the block is to take away the gap that exists between the bottom of the frame of your pistol and the top of the holster itself. So you can see here that that block has now taken that gap out. If I lock my holster in place, you'll see I've got no movement up and down, and as we've already done the width, got no movement side to side. So up and down, side to side, there's no movement at all. What I'm going to show you is basically how that block is installed and how it is adjusted. So the way that you would adjust it would be to, if you wanted the block higher, just unscrew the retaining screw and move these screws underneath here anti-clockwise, and you'll jack the block up. Not only can you, because there's 2 screws, you can actually move the block, cant it forward, cant it back. I'll take the block completely off so you can actually see what it looks like underneath. Gives you an idea of how the mechanism works. Oops. So you can see the 2 screws here, and then when they're moved in and out, as you say, they'll either move the block up, forward, backwards, and obviously if you screw them down you can move the block down. So I'll just put this retaining screw back in again. So there you go, Guba Ribas, one for all holster, universal, and you can see why it's universal, and basically every time you adjust it you're customizing it to fit your gun perfectly. If you need any more information, please don't hesitate calling us on 1300 558 667 or send us an email, info@db-shootingsupplies.com.au, and we'll certainly be happy to answer any of your questions.